Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing? We have had quite the I don't want to call it an adventure, but quite the time the past few days. That's why I haven't been here. If you haven't been following me on Discord, I'll get more into it as the stream progresses. But we're going to start off with something different. And it is Dagon, the complete edition. Part of the Fear-demic horror bundle that was released earlier, about a month and a half ago, right? Leading up to Halloween. I want to check this out. DLC. Uh-huh. Invert, yes. Oh no. Oops. There we go. Let's start. Dagon is a faithful, interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work focused on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited, progressing through locations along with the plot.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
Oh. Okay. Some trivia is hidden. In order to find the secrets, focus your eyes and look for the Elder sign. Okay.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death. It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Supercargo? Not just cargo, but supercargo. What makes cargo super? Can I interact with anything else, or just the boat? Just a boat. Am I like...
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
Okay.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
Oh, question mark. What is this? The Huns were Central Asian nomads who established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. They were known as brutal, deadly warriors and masters of quick raids, who also developed powerful composite bows, lassos, and early siege weapons. During World War I, the British used the words Hun as a synonym for Germans in order to emphasize their brutality. However, the term originated when the German Emperor Wilhelm II gave a speech to his troops on the 27th of July 1900 before they embarked to China. Should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated. No quarter will be given. Prisoners will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited. Just as 1,000 years ago the Huns under their king Attila made a name for themselves, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend. May the name German be affirmed by you in such a way in China that no Chinese will ever again dare to look aside at a German. The refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the laws and customs of war adopted during the First Hague Convention in 1899. It's a lot of reading. Okay. Alright, I need to turn the air down. Give me 30 seconds. Just gotta stand on it. Okay, sorry about that. I just started getting warm.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone, in a small boat, with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Visions, anything else?
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
Okay, before I do that...
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and
Yeah, I mean...
The change happened
It's pretty
whilst
fair.
I slept.
Change.
Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
What happened?
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see,
Monotonous undulations.
and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified
Play
than
me, Alpha.
astonished. For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime, Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
So this is purely interactive. There's not really any... Oh, what's that? The Origins of Dagon. Dagon seems to be inspired by Fishhead, a short novel by Irving S. Cobb about unnatural affinities between a hybrid idiot and the strange fish of an isolated lake. And Lovecraft's dream about a strange island emerging from the ocean and him crawling in the ooze that covered its surface. I dreamed that whole hideous crawl and you can yet feel the ooze sucking me down. Lovecraft's interest in the topic stemmed from his aversion to fish and sea smells. In his own words, I have hated fish and feared the sea and everything connected with it since I was 2 years old, but I cannot recall what earlier experience gave me such a profound and lasting aversion to the sea and seafood. Okay. Ugh. The hell is that? It's kind of gross, actually.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me, that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might, nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Yuck.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side.
Oops.
As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
Is that anything else? Nope.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
Yuck. What's going to be the payoff here, I wonder?
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it. By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance, an intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more.
Well, the mountain's no longer there.
Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. and in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy.
Oh, there it is.
Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack,
I want to pick up my pack.
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me, but I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual. Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
Nothing else? I figured there might be something else here to interact with.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express. For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientists or
Ugh, squishy squishy.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures.
Okay.
The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Okay. Cthulhu.
Plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men. Though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
Okay.
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Still waiting for the payoff.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it.
What'd you see?
With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Other things and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital. Brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing, nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
Okay.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Was the main deity, whatever. The main deity of the Philistines worshipped throughout the Middle East as the ancient god of fertility and crops. The rulers of Akkad chose him as the patron saint of their war conquest. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in an Assyrian poem, the underworld prison warder in one of the Babylonian texts. He often mistakenly taken for a fish god. Or he is often. Interesting.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
Okay. What am I over here for? Oh. Okay.
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement.
Not of the ravaging, I have never tasted an intoxicating liquor and never intend to. Having a strong aesthetic disgust at anything which blunts or coarsens the delicate nature. I don't even know. Wait, but he did morphine? Or is he saying the stories about a guy who did morphine? Wait, is this it? Is that GG?
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind, of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium. The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not find me. God, that hand! The window! The window!
Man, now he's dead. GG. Oh, I actually missed a lot of stuff. Wow.
I hate the moon. I am afraid of it. For when it shines on certain scenes familiar and loved, it sometimes makes them unfamiliar and hideous.
We'll see how long this story is. I didn't know you could zoom in until later, so I missed the other
It was
stuff.
in the spectral summer when the moon shone down on the old garden where I wandered. The spectral summer of narcotic flowers and humid seas of foliage that bring wild and many-colored dreams.
This is nice looking, actually. I mean, I know it's just a background and stuff, but it's still nice.
And as I walked by the shallow crystal stream, I saw unwanted ripples tipped with yellow light, as if those placid waters were drawn on in restless currents to silent and sparkling, bright and baleful, those moon-cursed waters hurried I knew not whither, whilst from the empowered banks, white lotus blossoms fluttered one by one in the opiate night wind, and dropped despairingly into the stream, swirling away horribly under the arched carven bridge. As I ran along the shore, brushing sleeping flowers with heedless feet, and maddened ever by the fear of unknown things and the lure of the dead faces, I saw that the garden had no end under that moon. For where by day the walls were, there stretched now only new vistas of trees and paths, flowers and shrubs, stone idols and pagodas, and bendings of the yellow-litten stream past grassy banks and under grotesque bridges of marble. And the lips of the dead lotus faces whispered sadly, nor did I cease my steps till the stream became a river, and joined amidst marshes of swaying reeds and beaches of gleaming sand, the shore of a vast and nameless sea.
Salvietta.
Upon that sea the hateful moon shone, and over its unvocal waves. And as I saw therein the lotus faces vanish, I longed for nets that I might capture them and learn from them the secrets which the moon had brought upon the night. But when the moon went over to the west, and the still tide ebbed from the sullen shore, I saw in that light old spires that the waves almost uncovered, and white columns gay with festoons of green seaweed. And knowing that to this sunken place all the dead had come, I trembled and did not wish again to speak with the lotus faces. Yet when I saw afar out in the sea a black condor descend from the sky to seek rest on a vast reef, I would fain have questioned him and asked him of those whom I had known when they were alive. This I would have asked him had he not been so far away, but he was very far, and could not be seen at all when he drew nigh that gigantic reef.
There's gotta be like a... There's not. Still. Nothing else to interact with.
So I watched the tide go out under that sinking moon and saw gleaming the spires, the towers, and the roofs of that dead, dripping city. And as I watched, my nostrils tried to close against the perfume-conquering stench of the world's dead. For truly, in this unplaced and forgotten spot, had all the flesh of the churchyards gathered for puffy sea worms to gnaw and glut upon. Over those horrors, the evil moon now hung very low, but the puffy worms of the sea need no moon to feed by. And as I watched the ripples that told of the writhing of worms beneath, I felt a new chill from afar out, whither the condor had flown.
Jesus, that
As
is
if
a warm
my
and bigger than I
flesh had
expected.
caught a horror before my eyes had seen it.
What about these worm bros? No interacting with worm bros?
Nor had my flesh trembled without cause, for when I raised my eyes, I saw that the waters had ebbed very low, shewing much of the vast reef whose rim I had seen before. And when I saw that this reef was but the black basalt crown of a shocking icon, whose monstrous forehead now shone in the dim moonlight, and whose vile hooves must pour the hellish ooze miles below, I shrieked and shrieked, lest the hidden face rise above the waters, and lest the hidden eyes look at me after the slinking away of that leering and treacherous yellow moon. And to escape this relentless thing, I plunged gladly and unhesitatingly into the stinking shallows.
Really? That doesn't seem very smart. Let's go hang out with worm bros
Where
after all.
amidst weedy walls and sunken streets, fat sea worms feast upon the world's dead.
Oh. So you... Oh, there was nothing there, okay. What the hell? What do you guys think? It's cool. It's cool, but it's like I don't know if I could sit here and do these other two little stories. Unless you guys are cool with it. GG. I could finish this next time. What do you guys think? Well, it's only you, me, Alpha, and somebody else. I think that's gonna do it. I think that'll do it. We'll finish this next time. YouTube, I'm gonna end you and restart you in a minute. So don't go anywhere.